Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, hosts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network series, The Seance. This is a special report. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Meckes. If this is your first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. Welcome back. This is part 5 of Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena, Analysis, Prediction, and Management of Human Affairs. A philosophical science with Jim Marshall, creator of Septemics and author of the book Septemics. But before we jump in, welcome back, Jim. Would you like to deliver? You're very, very welcome. So before we jump in, would you like to deliver a quick recap and a quick introduction?
Yeah, well, just let me introduce myself in case some of your viewers don't know who I am. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in the book you cited, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to talk about some of the content of that book.
Yeah. And for the viewers, I'm going to bring up the website too. You can check out the website at www.septemics.com. You can find it on Amazon or wherever you get your books, bookstores, wherever you get your books. And we are going to pick up on some of the scales on chapter 10. So for those who have already got the book and would like to follow through and follow with us on this, we are starting on this portion of this episode on chapter 10. So let me get that up on the screen here real quick. There we go. We are starting at the scale of stopping, which is also referred to as the scale of discontinuance. So, Jim, where should we start?
Well, first, let's talk about the word stopping, because the truth is, I gave an alternate name for each of the 35 chapters just to help depth of understanding. This is the only one where the synonym that I gave, discontinuance, is not a perfect match. Because in this context, the word to stop means both to discontinue and also to prevent. Which is, I think, very interesting because they're really two different things. But nevertheless, the scale applies both to either of those phenomena.
Yeah. And in your glossary, it goes withhold, restrain, hinder, or prevent, so on and so forth.
Right.
So, yeah.
So this is a spiral scale, meaning there is an apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. Meaning it's easy to mistake the two. Level 1 is cannot be stopped. Level 7 is must not stop. When you observe someone who is at level 7, his behavior may seem to be that of someone who cannot be stopped. But in truth, they are as far away as possible. Someone who must not stop is compulsive.
Yeah.
Like if you have somebody, let's say, who's a smoker, he must not stop smoking. He must not. Okay. he's compulsive about it. At the other end of the spectrum, when a person cannot be stopped, that means invincible, which is a drastically different thing. So you have to be alert to that. Now, this is a quantum scale, meaning there are no intervening gradations. You are either at level 1 or at level 2. There's nothing in between. And if you change levels on this scale, you change instantaneously, not gradually. So you're at level 2, for example, something happens, and suddenly you're at level 3 or you're at level 1. So that is what a quantum scale is. And it's a specific scale, meaning it has no general application. It only makes sense in a context. So how are you as regards stopping with your family? How are you as regards stopping with your work? And so forth. Could be an infinitude of applications or a virtual infinitude of applications as far as contexts. Okay, so let's look at the axis here. What are we measuring with this scale? So in each of the 35 scales, I look at this from an engineering point of view. If you have a scale is measuring something. That is what a scale is. So if you have a yardstick, it's measuring inches.
Yeah.
So it was important to me to make clear what we're measuring here. So what we're actually measuring with this scale is the change or the distance between freedom and entrapment. So if you are above level 1, you're at freedom. And if you're below level 7, you are in entrapment. Now, the reason I say above 1 and below 7 is those are unattainable absolutes. So a human cannot actually get to complete freedom, but he can get very, very close. And that's true at the other end, too. So that's what this scale is measuring. Obviously, everyone wants to be free. Nobody wants to be trapped. And this tells you a lot about how this manifests in people. It manifests in how they stop, meaning either prevent or discontinue. Now, if you look at the line, the horizontal line between 3 and 4, there's a line and it separates sane from insane. So if a person's stopping behavior is at level 1, 2, or 3, that's sane behavior. If it's at level 4, 5, 6, or 7, that's insane behavior, more so as you descend the scale. So if you're at level 7, that's more insane than being at level 6. And level 6 is more insane than being at level 5. So throughout the book, I go through this, and many of the skills that have this built into them, where there's no absolute sanity or absolute insanity. There are degrees of it, and that is a lot of what these scales delineate.
Yeah.
So let's start at level 7, must not stop. So this is somebody like Jack the Ripper, going around London, murdering young women. Okay, he obviously had a compulsion. Okay, so the man was insane.
Yeah.
So criminally insane, but he was insane. So, in some weird way that we don't understand, he was trapped in something. In other words, something in his mind made him compulsive in this way. So he was trapped in that. Now, up from that is must stop. So this is somebody who is determined to stop something. Now, it could either be must stop himself or it could be must stopping others. So this is suppressiveness, a person who is suppressing something. So let's say you have the type of fanatic who burns down or bombs abortion clinics, right? So in his mind, he must stop abortion.
Yeah.
So he's suppressing abortion. Now, that's not as crazy as must not stop. Now, you might think it is, but must stop is not as bad.
Uh,
It's a level up.
Hmm.
Or this could be somebody who, he must stop smoking, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
But he must stop. You see, that's daffy. Up from that is stopped. You're just stopped. And this is very similar to apathy. Apathy means literally no feeling in Greek.
Yeah.
So when a person is stopped, he can't really do anything. He's just in this fixed state. And that's not as bad as must stop. You see, he's not going around trying to stop the Jews or trying to stop the Christians or trying to stop the Republicans or whatever.
Yeah.
He's just stopped. It's not as bad. Up from that is cannot stop. Now, this is a person who does something compulsively. This is clearly abnormal, like the guy who can't stop eating, can't stop smoking, can't stop drinking alcohol. Whatever it is, like say you have a guy who is an ice cream fanatic. Okay, he just keeps eating ice cream. He can't stop himself.
Yeah. These are like
So,
the adrenaline junkies and stuff like that are out there, like always doing crazy, stupid stunts and stuff.
are you talking about this level in particular?
I guess so. That's what I'm seeing though in like my mind's eye. People just
Uh-huh.
can't stop it because of a compulsive adrenaline junkie that just can't stop doing what they're doing.
Well, I don't think adrenaline necessarily plays a part in
Mhm.
this, but whether it does or doesn't, you have a person who cannot stop.
Yeah.
An alcoholic is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
He's abnormal. Okay. Now, this is still kind of crazy,
Hmm.
right? I mean, alcoholism is diagnosable as a mental illness.
True.
Okay, so now you cross the line into sane behavior and you get to can stop. This is a guy who can stop. So he goes to a bar, he has two drinks, and he says, that's it. I got to drive home. I'm stopping. See,
Yeah.
he can stop. Now, a person who can stop, that doesn't necessarily mean he will stop, but he can if he wants. So you could have a guy who normally he eats till he's full, eats one hamburger and he's done. But you might have that same guy on Thanksgiving might say, well, I could stop, but I'm going to eat more because it's Thanksgiving. See, he could still be doing it,
Yeah.
but that's still kind of normal behavior. He can stop if he wants to.
Hmm.
Up from that is can be stopped. Now, this is not obvious. Can be stopped is a successful person. A successful person always knows he can be stopped. If you talk to Elon Musk, right, perhaps the most successful person in the world, he'll give you a long list of ways he can be stopped.
Yeah.
All the things that the government can do, all the things that his stockholders can do, all the things the climate can do, right? So a person who is a successful person is aware that he can be stopped. It doesn't mean he is stopped, but
Yeah.
he's aware that he can be stopped.
Now, is this with association of outside influence, so to speak?
With that, you don't have to put anything on it.
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
Okay.
Okay. In other words, the way this guy thinks of stopping is I can be stopped.
Mm. Okay.
As opposed to, like if you look at Adolf Hitler, he clearly was not aware that he could be stopped. He was way down on this scale. You
Yeah.
see, he was not aware he could be stopped. Uh, he had innumerable opportunities to relent and didn't because he had this strange delusion that something, somewhere in the bottom of this scale that kept him going.
Yeah.
So a smart person knows he can be stopped. So this is why, you pick your fights,
Hmm.
you know? So a person uh, can assess a situation and say, look at it realistically, know that he can be stopped. Like in 1963, the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the World Series 4 games straight.
Hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
The Yankees simply could not hit the Dodger pitching. They could not do it. So Mickey Mantle said that Sandy Koufax was the best left-hander he ever saw. Okay?
Hmm.
So the professional athletes have the idea they can be stopped.
Yeah.
They're not going out there saying, oh, nobody can beat us. That's dopey.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and at the top of the scale is cannot be stopped. And that is what invincibility is. So I'll give you an example. The Beatles in the mid 60s were invincible. There were 2 different times when the top 5 selling singles were all Beatle records.
Yeah.
Nobody else has ever done anything remotely close to that. And that is what John Lennon meant when he said we had a license to kill.
Uh-huh.
Which is why their music advanced and advanced and advanced. Starting in 1966, they decided we're not touring anymore. We're done with this. And they just recorded. Of course, that was kept a secret, but their music kept advancing. And by the time they got to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band,
Hmm.
they were in new territory. I mean, that was the beginning of progressive rock. The term did not exist. And that's because they were invincible, right? They had the so-called White Album,
Yeah.
right? It had nothing printed on it at all. It just had embedded in it the Beatles. So if you looked very carefully, you could see pressed into the cardboard it said the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. This was a double album that went platinum before it got to the store.
Jeez.
Okay. Nobody else has ever done that.
Mm.
So that's what invincible looks like. Now, eventually, the world changed, music changed, and passed them by, and they weren't invincible anymore. But if you're looking for people, we have persons of myth like Hercules, Samson, who were like this, cannot be stopped. So Samson is presented to us in the Bible as a historical figure
Yeah.
who was for a while invincible. Now, some people would say, well, that's really mythology. And that carries you over to Hercules because he represented the same thing for the Greeks,
Hmm.
was a person who was invincible. So that's the scale. So this is really important in assessing somebody. You assess somebody, and this tells you, do you want this person around or not?
Yeah.
Now, a person might be okay in one thing and not in another. For example, you might have a guy doesn't have a drinking problem, doesn't have a drug problem, doesn't have a smoking problem, right? But he's 200 pounds overweight,
Yeah.
right? He's killing himself. He's sabotaging his life because he cannot stop eating.
Yeah.
He just can't do it.
Stop eating the bad food.
And he might even be at level 7, must not stop. I must not stop eating,
Hmm.
right? That's compulsive.
Yeah.
So you would have to figure out, well, what level is this guy at? But anyway, the point is that it's a specific scale, so it's useful
Yeah.
because Jackie Gleason was notorious. He was a chain smoker. He was a heavy drinker. He was a glutton. He was a womanizer. I mean, this was definitely a guy who couldn't stop.
Yeah.
But still, CBS gave him $7 million to do The Honeymooners circa 1952. That was an astonishing amount of money
Yeah.
at that time. I mean, in 1952, you could buy a beautiful luxury car for $1,000.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, a lot of people love the guy. Millions of people love the guy, right? And I was one of them. I think it was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, he had some problem with stopping.
Oh yeah. Jackie
You know,
Gleason was
he
awesome.
couldn't just have one beer and stop. You know, he had to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Smokey and the Bandit. He was good in that one. So let's go to our next one, which is line 13, the scale.
Okay, the scale of scholarship. This is extremely important because in our society, learning is the pathway to success.
Mhm.
Uh, this is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. It's a gradual scale, meaning there's an infinitude of gradations between each of the levels. And it is a general scale, meaning you use it once on a person and you're done. So a person is either a good student or not a good student. So what are we measuring with this scale? We're measuring interest.
Yeah.
The word student comes from the Latin verb studere, which means to desire. So the Romans sort of got the idea that you had these young people who would go to someone to learn because they desired the learning.
Yeah.
Okay? Which is another way of saying they were interested. So this is really important. Apparently, most of the people in the teaching profession don't know this because they don't pay attention to this. Now, I have been involved in education continuously from the age of 3, and I'm still doing it.
Mm.
Okay? And when I've worked mostly as a tutor rather than as a teacher, so I watch the student and I pay attention to his interest. If his interest starts to wane, for whatever reason, I get very busy to fix that.
Yeah.
So I think of my job as a tutor as creating interest in the student and maintaining interest in the student, because that's how you become a better student. So my students are very enthused, and I've taught many, many different subjects. Doesn't matter to me what the subject is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still watching the student and I'm still looking at his interest.
Yeah. You're kind of like keeping an eye keeping an eye on their pantomimes, their reactions, their how
Right,
focused they are, their
right,
body language.
right. It's not just body language, it's what they say,
Mm.
how their eyes are. You can see interest, you know? One of the things you get in the book, in Septemics, when people look at it, their interest flares. They go, oh, yeah, I see. This is cool, you know? Then
Yeah.
they go to the next one. Oh, yeah, I see. This is, it stimulates their interest.
Yeah.
So once that happens, they're in it. In other words, that's the good news.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to the scale. Okay, so that's what we're measuring here. And that once you know that this is a scale of interest, you can figure out what the levels are and they make sense. So at the bottom of this is what I call the non-student. There are millions of persons in classes who will not learn. Now you might say, that doesn't make any sense. Well, there's all kinds of reasons to be there. Maybe they're there because dad says, if you don't go to school, I'm going to beat you.
Hmm.
Maybe the guy is there because he wants to meet girls. He's in co-ed classes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the guy's there because he's a drug dealer and he wants to sell dope to the other students. I mean, there's a variety of reasons why somebody might be present in a class, but still will not learn because he's a non-student. So this is the type of person who will drop out of high school.
Hmm.
Okay? Now, what I explain is that having this person in the class is detrimental.
Oh yeah.
Because
Hinders
he's
everybody.
going to mess it up. He's going to cut up. He's going to distract. He's going to get the other students into trouble. He doesn't want to be there. He's not going to learn anyway because he refuses to learn. You're better off letting him go do something else.
Yeah. Be an apprentice in something else that he's interested in.
Right. And even if he's just going to hang out, and be a drug dealer, at least he's not messing up your class.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are the people who cause trouble in class because the people who want to learn are the ones who are interested, and the non-student is always a detriment to them, one way or another. Okay, so up from that is the facile student. Now, this is pretended learning. Most people don't know about this. A facile student might get good grades, but he's not learning anything. He's studying for the test. You can spot these people because they will boast about not knowing anything. Like a guy will say, yeah, I took algebra. I don't remember a damn thing from it. He was pretending to learn.
Yeah.
Now, this type of person might cheat on the exam, but he might also just sort of regurgitate the answers. And again, you can say, well, what's the point? Well, there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to be there. Maybe he's there, for some of the reasons I cited before. But whatever the reason, the facile student looks like he's learning and isn't. So he's hard to spot. Pretended learning. And the way you can tell a facile student is he cannot apply it.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say you're in geometry and you're learning the Pythagorean theorem, right? And you say to the student, Smith, I want you to calculate for me the diagonal across the playground outside here. He looks at you blankly. You just taught him the Pythagorean theorem, okay? And you could even say, well, the fence on both sides is 100 feet. And he can just sit down, bingo, just calculate that, tell you what it is without ever measuring it, and he will be exactly right. But he didn't get it. He couldn't apply it because he's a facile student. He's pretending to learn.
Yeah.
He might even be able on the test to say c squared equals a squared plus b squared. He might be able to do that. But he still doesn't really understand anything because he didn't learn it. So up from that is the poor student. Now, the poor student, you can spot. You can see that he's a poor student. This poor student does not like to learn. Now, of course, there are millions of these, right? The reason he doesn't like to learn is he's a poor student. And the reason he's a poor student is because he doesn't like to learn. In other words, He doesn't really have interest. That's why he's a poor student. If you could kindle his interest, then he would like to learn. You see?
Yeah.
But this guy you can spot as opposed to the facile student. The poor student gets bad grades. And you can talk to him and you'll know right away that he's a poor student because he's not pretending. He's just saying, yeah, I don't like school, and it's no fun and I'm not good at it. That's all he knows.
Yeah.
Up from that is the average student. The average student is willing to learn. That's what interest is. Interest is a willingness to learn. So the average student is someone who's interested in whatever it is. Now, he may only be interested in it because he has to take the course and he wants to get a good grade. And maybe that's enough for him to be interested. In other words, I'm going to pay attention to this course, even though I don't really care about it, because I want to get a good grade, so I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, above that is the good student. The good student learns well. This guy is really paying attention. Why is he paying attention? Because he's interested. He's quite interested in this. And so he learns well. He's motivated. The interest motivates him. Oh, really? That's how this works. That's what an absolute value is. I see. You see?
Yeah.
So he's a good student and he'll get good grades. Now, above that is the very good student. The very good student, he doesn't merely learn well, he likes to learn. See, the good student might not necessarily like to learn, but he learns well. The very good student likes to learn. This is fun for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yippee, I get to go to chemistry. Now, to many people, that seems like a fantasy, but
Yeah.
apparently they haven't met anybody like this. But there are people who are very good students. They like to learn. It's fun. Oh boy, today we're going to learn about cosines.
Yeah.
Yippee. And I'm not being facetious. He likes to learn. Yes, teach me about cosines. Oh, I see. That's how they work. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the top is the avid student. The avid student loves to learn, loves it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not just fun for him, it's avidity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can say to him, look, I've got tickets to the Super Bowl. You want to go? No, sorry, I've got class today.
Mm.
He wants to go to class. He'd rather be in the class than go to the Super Bowl, even if the tickets are free. That's an avid student. That guy has maximal interest. This guy is just dripping with interest. You can see it when you look at him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy who asks questions, and they're pertinent questions and sensible questions. They're not questions because he wasn't paying attention. This guy will push the teacher.
Yeah.
The teacher will have a challenge answering this guy's questions.
Yeah.
And so other students in the class, forget about the answer. They might not even understand the question. So that's how this works. Now, in the chapter, I give specific, detailed instructions on how to move somebody up this scale.
Yeah.
It's not vague. It's not ambiguous. So if you want to make yourself a better student, or make maybe your son or your stepson or your nephew, whoever's involved, maybe if you're a teacher, you want to make your student a better student. It's in this chapter. Here's how to do it.
Mm.
So if the guy's at level 3, you're going to move him to level 2. If
Yeah.
he's at level 2, you're going to move him to level 1. And basically, the procedure by which you do this is the same no matter what level you're at.
Huh.
It's just a question of focusing in on the detail and knowing, okay, this guy's a good student. I'm going to make him a very good student. So you know your target.
Yeah.
And when he becomes a very good student, you'll say, now this guy's a very good student. See, he likes to learn. That's different from learns well. It's better.
Hmm. And then the avid student, these
Yeah.
are more likely these students to become engineers or teachers themselves because they love to learn and they want to be teachers.
I wouldn't generalize to that. No,
No?
this could be anything.
Yeah.
This guy could become a playwright. He could become a doctor. He could
Yeah.
become a priest. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
The subject matter is a completely separate thing.
All right.
But the avid student generally will be avid about learning anything. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You could have the guy could turn out to be anything. What he's not going to turn out to be is ignorant.
Right.
Okay. So, and I'll tell you, an avid student is the type of person who it's almost impossible to prevent him from learning.
Mm.
Abraham Lincoln had, depending on what estimates you accept, about 12 months of schooling total in his whole life. Okay? It didn't stop him from becoming probably the best lawyer in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
It didn't stop him from becoming president of the United States. And most scholars think he was the best president of all of them. Not only did he not have access to school, his father ridiculed him daily for wasting his time on books. Okay? His father would belittle him. What are you reading that book for? Go outside and milk the cow.
Mm.
Okay? So he had lots of reasons to not learn, but he still learned.
Yeah.
So he clearly had interest within him that motivated him.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same thing is true for Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton was, by the time he was, I think, 12 or 13, he was an orphan. I didn't really have any money. But he was so smart. He was running a business by the time he was 13. And the people in his community took up a collection to send him to college. That's how smart he was. Okay?
Wow.
This
Yeah.
was a guy who wanted to learn.
Wanted it. Yep.
So that's the big thing. If you are motivated to learn, you will learn. Even if your teachers are lousy, even if you're not taking a course, a person who's an avid student, he can just learn something on his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He can
Especially with the access of information and knowledge today on the internet.
That's right.
Anybody can learn anything.
That's
and
right.
It's easy. So, yeah, I've done that many times.
I actually have had lawyers accuse me of being a lawyer.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had lawyers that when I told them I had very little legal training, they just didn't believe it. They just thought I was lying.
Wow.
I took one course in law, and then I just continued to study it for the rest of my life.
Mm.
So now, when I read legal papers or write legal papers, I have to explain. The judge says, the judge assumes I'm a member of the bar. I have to tell him, no, Your Honor, I'm not a member of the bar. I have to disabuse them of this perception.
Yeah.
And I just did it on my own because I was motivated to do it.
Yeah.
So I've had many people when I told them I wasn't a lawyer, they said, "You're a liar. You know, we don't believe you. You're a lawyer." It's
Yeah.
happened many times. But to
Wow.
me, I learned law the same way Abe Lincoln learned law.
Read it.
I read it,
Hmm.
all right? And when I was in court, I paid attention. I sometimes would go to court just to watch
Hmm.
and, see, okay, what's going on here? What happens at this level?
Yeah.
What happens at the appellate level? How is this different? You know? So uh, that's how I became a polymath,
Mm.
by an insatiable curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I'll give you an example. I carried with me an unabridged dictionary for 15 years, everywhere I went. And I was traveling all over the country. And here's my unabridged dictionary. Now, of course, there was no internet back then.
Yeah.
Now you just open your phone. Uh, but I'd be there in a motel, right? In, I don't know, Cincinnati. And I'd listen to somebody on TV, they'd use a word. I didn't know what that word is. I immediately looked it up.
Yeah.
So eventually it made me very, very literate just from doing that.
Hmm.
I remember once I came out of the bathroom and I had my unabridged dictionary with me. And my friend laughed uproariously. He said, "This guy reads the dictionary on the John,"
Oh man.
which was true,
Yeah.
you know? So, I was really getting into the detail of it to really understand what the word really meant in all of its manifestations and its derivation and everything else.
Hmm.
Uh, and that made it easy for me to learn all the other subjects like law. Because, the average guy hears the word injunction, he doesn't know what it means, and it's just like a blank wall in front of him.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that's really the key if you want to learn, is to really
Yeah.
know the
Research.
language.
Yeah.
Because no matter what subject you're learning, the book is written in the language that you speak.
Hmm.
So if people think, well, I'm learning math, I don't need to know vocabulary. That's not true. The math book is written in English.
Yeah.
So I've tutored people in math, in science, et cetera, et cetera. I say, what does the word electron mean to you? And they're like Jackie Gleason, hama, 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 hama. I say, okay, let's look it up. Let's look up the word.
Yeah.
And the guy reads it. And I say, okay, now go back and look at this page again. He says, okay, now I understand this. So, that's closely related to scholarship. And when we get to the scale of literacy,
Yeah. That
you'll see
segues into the next
that's the next one.
literacy. Definitely. Definitely. Let's jump to that one. Let's see. Here we go. Boom, boom. Scale of literacy.
Right. Okay. So this is a little ambiguous in the sense that it refers to reading and writing, but it also refers to speaking.
Mm.
Because a person's level on this scale will show up in how he speaks.
Yeah.
So you can spot the literacy of a person by listening to him speak. So, for example, if you ever listen to William F. Buckley, for example, speak, the man was extremely literate. Okay. And since he's deceased, I'll go ahead and say he was probably level 2 hyper-literate,
Hmm.
which I describe as a brilliant person.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with whether you agree with him or anything. That's a completely separate subject. As opposed to, if you listen to professional criminals, you can see that they're not literate.
Yeah.
They don't know grammar. They don't know the correct meanings of words. They don't know how to pronounce words. So even just listening to them speak.
Hmm.
A buddy of mine cracked me up once when we were working together as musicians, and so he would tell me, I had this happen to me too. It's so funny, I can't keep a straight face. He said some beautiful girl would come up to him, and he would say, because he was a single guy as I was, and he would say, "Yippee, here she comes," because he already spotted her, right?
Yeah.
So she comes up to the band, and she says, "Geez, you guys are really good." And he said, whatever interest he had in this woman evanesced immediately, you know, with that one sentence.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I've had that happen to me too.
Man.
But anyway, let's talk about this. So, what are we measuring with this scale? We're measuring comprehension. This is about comprehension. Now, they talk about reading comprehension. So, at above level 1 is total comprehension. Nobody can really get to total comprehension, but you can get close.
Yeah.
And below level 7 is no comprehension. And I don't think even a catatonic schizophrenic in a padded cell has some comprehension.
Hmm.
So that's what this is about. That is the underlying issue here. So it tells you what, if you want to make somebody literate, you have to get him to comprehend.
Yeah.
So this idea that in school where when the student doesn't know the meaning of a word, they just make him go past it, that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
Completely. The student comes to he's reading something and he mispronounces and he stumbles on it, hesitates. I say right away, what does that, I use the word, like what does the word congruent mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And he might say, I don't know. Or he might just say hamana, hamana, hamana. But okay, let's look it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had one student who I tutored for some time, just for general scholarship. And I spent a lot of time with him, having him read and finding the words he didn't understand, and then having him look up the word and teaching him how to use the dictionary properly.
Mm.
And after so many months, he improved dramatically across all of his subjects because he sort of got the idea of some of these words I know and some of them I don't, and the ones I don't, I'm going to look up.
Yeah.
So that's what this is about. Now, this is a spiral scale, meaning it's easy to confuse level 1 and level 7. It's easy to confuse a paraliterate person with an illiterate person. Now, there aren't that many paraliterate persons to begin with. A paraliterate person would be somebody for whom literacy is not needed. This is somebody who has bona fide psychic abilities.
Oh. Like a
So,
savant. Like a savant.
yeah, well, a savant could mean many different things.
Yeah.
But most people will not really have any idea what paraliterate means. And it means the person doesn't need literacy. He's beyond literacy.
Oh, okay. No,
His comprehension is so high that this is the type of person, he can just look at you and know what you want.
okay. Yep. Supernatural. Yeah.
Right. And at the bottom, illiterate. So you can mistake the paraliterate for the illiterate easily. That's the easy mistake to make.
Mm-hmm.
So now this breaks down into something that's discussed in sociology and anthropology, which is levels of society. Levels of society correspond to levels of literacy. So When people are at the level of illiterate, we call them primitive, right? If you have a tribe, it has no reading or writing of any kind, we say that's a primitive society.
Hmm.
Now, above that is a barbaric society. Now, in a barbaric society, they have reading and writing. It's just that they're not very good at it.
Yeah.
Civilization is the result of literacy. Civilized people are literate people. So the top 4 levels are people that fit into the civilized. You could say this is a civilized person. So, for example, if you talk to people in organized crime, they're barbaric. They're either semi-literate or subliterate. They don't know the difference between a gerund and a participle.
Mm. Mm-mm.
They don't know anything about the subjunctive mood. They're not literate people. They're barbaric.
Yeah.
And that's how they behave in a barbaric way. So going from illiterate up to subliterate, this is a beginner. Like you have a little kid and he's in, I guess, the first or the second grade. You know, he's learning how to say C-A-T, cat.
Yeah.
Okay. He's subliterate. So he could read some things. He can write his own name. He can read his address. You know, he can read the name of the school he goes to. But he's not illiterate, but he's a beginner.
Yeah.
Now, there are adults like this. Okay, there are people around who can sign their names and can speak, but they really are not able to read.
Hmm.
And many of those people become criminals. You know, if you actually study the lifetimes of criminals, the backgrounds of criminals,
Yeah.
to the best of my knowledge, 99% of them were not what I would call a literate person.
Hmm.
There are a couple of stellar examples, and they really stuck out. So above subliterate is semi-literate. Now, semi-literate is the person, he can read the newspaper. He can read People magazine.
Yeah.
He can listen to the news and understand it. But he's not what I would call a literate person. And I'll give you an example. I once knew a doctor, a friend of mine, and I had just finished reading a world famous novel. And just socially, I saw the person. I said, "Here, this is a great book. Read it." She said, "Okay." Well, the next time I saw this person, she gave it back to me and she said, and I quote, "I can't read this book."
Oh.
So you would think that a doctor could read a popular novel.
Yeah.
There are millions of people with graduate degrees who are subliterate.
Mm.
You know, especially in the STEM subjects. People, you know, they know the subject, but they're not what I would call a literate person.
Yeah.
I mean, you could give them a Shakespearean play, say, read this, and then give them a test on it, and they'll fail.
Hmm.
So don't think just because a person has a graduate degree that makes them a literate person. It does not.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
back to the scale. Okay, so a literate person is fluent, right? We talk about a person being fluent in a certain language. So this is a person who can open up pretty much anything. You know, if he speaks English, he can read the Constitution. He can read Ayn Rand. He can read Thomas Mann. You know, he can read. He's fluent. Now, above that is what we call an intellectual. An intellectual is very literate. That's what makes a person an intellectual. He is beyond merely fluent.
Hmm.
He is so literate that he becomes a person of intellect. Because you have to you have to realize reading is an inherently intellectual activity.
Yeah.
Right? So you're looking at either a screen or a page, and that's usually with a white background, and then it has these black marks on it, right? That's
Mhm.
completely arbitrary. It's completely significant, right? This is not hieroglyphics. It's not a picture of a cat,
Yeah.
right? You have to know CAT, and then you have to connect it with the concept.
Hmm.
So when a person becomes very literate, he becomes intellectual.
Yeah.
And remember what I said about just because a person has a graduate degree doesn't make him literate, and it certainly doesn't make him very literate. Because I had all kinds of friends who had degrees in various subjects who were not terribly literate.
Hmm.
Uh, some of them were.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend who had a PhD in uh, biochemistry, and he was incidentally a very literate person.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with his degree in biochemistry. That was something he developed to where he was a very intellectual person.
Hmm.
But you can listen to people who have graduate degrees in specific subjects, and you'll find out that outside of that subject, they know very little.
Yeah.
And when they talk about it, you can tell. There's one guy on the internet who teaches math and science. And to this day, I'm a math and science fanatic. And so I like to watch his presentations. Uh, and you can see that the guy doesn't really know English.
Huh.
He uses wrong grammar all the time.
Yeah.
So you would think a guy who's going to be a teacher and present videos on the internet would know English. He doesn't.
Hmm.
So, he's probably semi-literate.
Yeah. Semi-literate. Huh.
So back to the scale.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get to hyper-literate. Now, hyper-literate, most people never get there, is what I call a brilliant person. And one of the traits of a hyper-literate person is when he contacts a word, the meaning of which he does not know, he knows that.
Hmm.
He'll come across a word, and it might be a word that he just simply doesn't know. He says, wait a minute, I don't know this word, and I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Or he might say, maybe there's a definition of this word that I don't know. So I'm going to look it up. And I'll look it up and say, oh, yeah, I see definition 5 is the one that fits here. You see?
Yeah.
So his palate is so sensitive that when he comes into contact with a word or a symbol that he does not comprehend, he knows immediately.
Hmm.
This is a rare bird. There's not too many people like that.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then above that, you have paraliterate, which is a person who doesn't need literacy.
Hmm.
He's beyond literacy.
Beyond. Yeah. Now that begs the question: Have you met anybody that was close to that level? Supernatural, telepathy, or
I've known a great many people who had extensive psychic abilities.
hmm. And there's not too many.
There's,
But
there's more than you think.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, First of all, most people who have these abilities keep it a secret
Hmm.
because they don't want to be ridiculed and all of that. So they just keep it a secret. Having worked with hundreds of clients, this came up all the time. Because, most of the people that came to me were above average people. They wanted to get smarter, wiser, more ethical, whatever. So that's above average.
Yeah.
And then I would find out that this person has these psychic abilities. And many of them had them from childhood.
Yeah.
And that they just don't tell people about it.
Yeah.
But think about this. If you could read somebody's mind, right, and you met somebody, would you tell them, I can read your mind?
No.
No, you wouldn't tell them that. That would make them very uncomfortable.
Yep.
Okay. So you probably would just not say it. But, a lot of it is there are lots of people who can see the future, who know that a stock is going to go up or know who's going to get elected.
Yeah.
They just don't go around saying, I can see the future, because there's no payoff in that.
Yeah.
So what you do find sometimes is you have a community. I used to actually belong to a group of people like that who were sort of psychic people, and they all had these, excuse me, varying types and extents of these abilities.
Different intuitive.
So they had a club. In fact, I belong to a couple of clubs like that.
That's cool. I would not have
I
expected
don't know
that.
why. All of a sudden, I'm coughing.
Have some water.
That won't help.
No?
I actually
Right.
made a joke in this one group. I said, look, here's the way to manage this group. Don't say when or where the next meeting is going to be.
Yeah.
One person decides, all the other people have to read that person's mind in order to show up. So the people who show up are qualified to be members of the group, and the people who don't are not.
Exactly. If you're not meant to be at that particular meeting at that time, apparently you didn't get the memo.
It's a question of having the ability to know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people don't realize there is something just called knowing. You can
Mhm.
just know something.
Claircognizance.
Most people get that confused with understanding. Understanding is a different thing. Like somebody explains calculus to you, and you say, okay, I understand it. But you can simply know something. Sometimes you see this in like love at first sight. A guy will say, as soon as I met her, I knew this was the girl for me.
Yeah.
So what's that? Where'd that come from?
I don't know.
Should we go back to the
Yeah.
scale?
Let's sum this one up.
Okay, so anyway, this is really important because in industrialized society, learning is the whole key. But even in a primitive society, learning is important. The Native Americans, they knew the plants, they knew the trees, they knew the animals, they knew all kinds of things. They could tell the track of one animal from another animal. I mean, they had their own kind of comprehension and literacy that enabled them to survive.
Yeah.
But particularly today in industrialized society, it's all about literacy. I mean, if you're not literate, you're not going to get anywhere. Actually, I think the idea that you have people who are at or near the bottom of the scale who are allowed to vote,
Oh, yeah.
how can they possibly know? I mean, the world is so complicated. Even if like I watch the news every day. I've been watching the news every day since I was about 12. Okay. And there's a lot to find out. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Things pop up. And you have to be literate. I mean, if you're going to listen to this news person, you have to understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're going to go online and you're going to read it, I mean, take Septemics. You have to be able to read to benefit from Septemics.
Yeah.
Now, I went out of my way to minimize the barrier by putting a glossary not only in front of each of the 35 chapters, even in front of the introduction. There's a glossary.
Yeah.
So I'm helping the person, telling them I'm anticipating this problem. And I tell them in the book, read the glossary before you read the corresponding chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take that long.
No, it doesn't.
If you know the words, you say, okay, I know that, I know that, I know that. Oh, here's what I don't know. Okay, I know that, I know that. Oh, here's what I don't know. So then when you get to the material, you can inhale it because you know the key words, the most
Mm-hmm.
important words. The names of all the levels and the names of all the scales are in the glossary.
Yeah. Yeah. Good
So,
association.
right. So I'm making it easy because I want people to benefit from this. That's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
I already know this material. I've been using this material for decades. So the 25 years that I spent writing the book was so that other people could benefit from this data.
Yeah. It's definitely useful. Very useful.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So before we close this episode, what would you like to give as a takeaway for everybody?
Well, I just want to say that every person is at some level on every scale. Now, you can ignore that data, but it's much smarter to use it.
Mm-hmm.
It's much smarter to find where you are, and because then you can target yourself for the next level up and you can advance. Or where's this other person?
Yeah.
Like, for example, the scale of literacy. I don't speak to everyone the same way. I speak to people who are at different levels of literacy according to their level of literacy. I mean, I had clients who came to me from Europe whose first language was not English. Obviously, I had to be careful to speak to them. I wouldn't say colossal or gargantuan, I'd say big,
Yeah.
right? So that's just one tiny example of how useful this is. You really should take advantage of figuring out where you are and the people around you where they are. It will change your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. Jim, thank you again, brother.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you again. You're
It
very
was a
welcome.
pleasure.
Definitely. So I would say stay tuned, everybody, for let me go back to here we go. We will pick up on our next episode, our special report on instruction of Septemics, a philosophical science, with chapter 13, 14, and 15 the next time. Awesome. Thanks again, Jim, and thank you, everybody, for tuning
Thanks,
in.
Paul.
We will see you next time.